auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornosky. So glad to be with you again. Our website, aneighborschoice.com. That's aneighborschoice.com, where you can always look forward to our exclusive online-only podcasts called Things Hidden, or our essays. You find all of that at aneighborschoice.com. And that's what you're coming to expect. Every day we have this broadcast together, challenging toxic groupthink with art and science and culture and neighborly conversations from all kinds of individuals that give us hope and inspiration. And today we have a great guest on with us. But before I bring him on, I want to read a poem. It's called The Lament. Life belongs to tortured souls. I crave the anguish from the moment I was born. I need the torment. Happiness is an illusion. I am addicted to this poison. I drink it with resolve, and it consumes me, for happiness is an illusion. I hope that you are real. I rise through you like wax through candlewick. I burn through you. You are my muse in this forsaken world of madness and despair. I live through you. I love through you. You are my skin, my armor, and my shell. I breathe through you. You are the nail that keeps me to the cross. You give me joy through misery and pain that flows from creation. The life is not fulfilled when tubes are full and canvases are virgin. Enlightenment is not for the content. The beauty of this world is gushing through my wounds. That's a poem from our guest who joins us now. He is a Renaissance man, an artist, a musician, a nuclear scientist, Dr. Max Fomitichev Zamilov. How you doing, Max?
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on the show, and thank you for reading my poem.
Yeah, I hope you're not blushing for reading your art in front of you. I guess that's always awkward.
I am blushing. I'm happy nobody can see me now.
Well, it's so good to have you on, and usually we're talking about science with you, but I saw that poem that you shared, and I thought, that's a new, we like sharing poetry on this show. We do the whole thing, and we do Renaissance on this program. That includes art as well. When I was thinking of that poem as I read it, I was thinking, that's the thing about human beings. We want conflict. We want drama. And I know you're talking about pain in that poem, but drama is part of that. And if we're content, if we're too happy, if we're too fat and happy, if we're too decadent as a society, we will create drama and we will create conflict in order to give us some kind of meaning, don't we?
Exactly. That's exactly the point. Even in our lives, taken as individuals, we need a healthy amount of drama and conflict just to keep things interesting.
Right. And that's what we see, all around us is so much of media and movies and things that we consume are all about stoking that pain and that conflict and that sense of stumbling against other people who don't want to give, yield to you and what you want, right?
Right. Yeah, and unfortunately, mass media became sort of this fountain of drama that feeds us on a daily basis because this is what we crave for as human beings.
So what is it then? If we have to have drama to give our lives meaning, then how do we have that balance, huh? Right?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I don't know if there is a simple answer, but I would say it's a postulate of human condition, if you will, that we need drama to make progress and to grow above and beyond ourselves. But in the same amount, there has to be a healthy amount of drama. But, how do you define healthy as opposed to, just drama for the sake of drama and it gets out of control? I don't know. That's a great question to humanitarians, artists, everyone, really.
Well, one way to avoid too much drama is to have a common vision that excites everyone in a win-win fashion. I tell people politics is like lunchroom drama. Who's sitting at whose table, who's cool, who's not, who looked at who got two roles instead of one role. It's all drama, drama, drama. And that's what politics is about. But I tell people, if you were working for a company and they really had a way to do anti-gravity, and you could just float across the ocean with this device they were working on. And if you had the opportunity to work on that team, the electric excitement that you would have, I think, when you're at lunchroom drama, it wouldn't matter as much. You'd be more excited about getting to work. Now, I know I'm being a little bit naive. I know that there's always envy and ego involved when you have a dramatic invention and everybody wants to take credit and everybody wants to do it their way. But in general, when you have a common vision that is so revolutionary and exciting, it can kind of help you forget about smaller things like who's sitting at whose table. You just want to keep working on your invention and don't worry about who's sitting at whose table,
Right. And if I may paraphrase what you just said, I think a healthy drama would be a drama tied to a common goal. And when I say these words, it makes me think about, Soviet space program, which was, pretty significant development and pretty big, turmoil for the chief designer, Sergei Korolev, who was a centerpiece of that program. And, if you take his personal life, it was, nothing short but of a tragedy. But, the accomplishment overall contributed to the development of humanity. So I think that's kind of drama that we need more of, drama tied to a common goal for the advancement, of our species.
Right. Well, that's kind of the premise of this program, is that we've got to be able to have common visions that don't require win-lose situations to bring about positive change. We can find those things. And I think that's what the world of science should be motivated by, is those win-win solutions. I wanted to ask you, in that vein of thought, about the news that, NASA has been working. They've detected Lattice confinement fusion. It's perhaps a new energy source for deep space missions. And it's maybe a little technical for some in our audience, but I just wanted to get your take on that, because I know you followed that story and you are interested in the world of low energy nuclear research. So tell us a little bit about what you've heard about this and what this might mean.
Yes, that's actually a pretty significant development. And as you mentioned earlier in this program, that I'm not just a poet, I'm a scientist, and I work in the field of nuclear research. And of course, I keep track of all of the developments. So this article was published a couple of months ago, and it came across my desk as soon as it was released, and I was stunned. Stunned for two reasons. And the first, it was quality research. I couldn't find any weak spots on it. And the second reason I was stunned, because I'd say it superficially, legitimizes cold fusion or low energy nuclear research. And it's funny how we classify things in a real science and pseudoscience. So cold fusion or LENR, low energy nuclear reactions, were considered pseudoscience, and probably still are considered pseudoscience by majority of academia, and mostly because there was no theoretical basis for the purported nuclear reactions that cold fusion scientists believed took place in solid state. And here we have a paper published by NASA researchers that discovers exactly the same. The nuclear reactions occurring in solid state. So you don't build a huge, gigantic reactor. You have just vials sitting on the desk, and an electron beam scans those vials, and nuclear fusion takes place inside the crystalline lattice of material confined in those vials. And that's a pretty major accomplishment, and it's pretty exciting. Fortunately, there's no controversy about it because the physics of the process is well understood. And I say well understood with an asterisk, meaning that the basic process is well understood, and it's not controvertible. Everybody agrees on how those fusion reactions take place, and that's what the radiation detection data from the experiment corroborates. What is not understood and what still remains a mystery is that the probability of those reactions are much higher than you would expect from theoretical calculations. So they know how much deuterium is in the lattice, they know what energy of the electrons in the beam, and they can compute what the probability of deuterium nuclei fusing would be. And it's 1,000 times less than the observed amount. And they clearly state that in the paper. They say that the theoretical mechanism seems to be well understood, but we don't know why the probability is greater, and it's perhaps due to electron screening of Coulomb potential of the nucleus. And that's what cold fusion, researchers have been talking about all along, that there are some processes that we do not yet understand that contribute to screening of Coulomb potential of nuclei that facilitates fusion. So finally, this is in the spotlight, and this is something to be excited about.
Now, in the broader world of low-energy nuclear research, what some people would say, the future belongs to, batteries and massive innovations and graphene batteries and all kinds of technologies around that space, solid-state materials, that maybe cold fusion is amazing and should be researched as science, but is it really the future of energy, or is something more solid going to be the future of where clean energy, too cheap to meter, comes to fruition?
I would like to think that, cold fusion or low energy nuclear reactions, or as NASA called it, lattice confined fusion, is the future for two reasons. Because it's very simple. You don't have to construct a massive reactor to make this happen. So it is simple, it's cheap, and with enough ingenuity and enough research hours and man hours spent on it, I'm sure we will be able to derive a viable means of power generation of this idea. But it doesn't mean we don't need batteries. We need batteries still. It will probably take some time before we're able to build large enough reactors based on this idea, or small enough reactors that we could would use to replace batteries. So I think we will need batteries along the way, but I don't think batteries will be the solution, because everybody agrees that chemistry is really pushed to the limit now. There is only so much energy in terms of energy density you can pack in a cubic centimeter of any battery material. And we are rapidly approaching that limit. So once we hit that limit, we can only move towards nuclear science, because that's where the energy is. And I hate to rain on the parade of renewable energy, but energy density isn't there. You need acres of solar panels, you need acres of wind turbines to generate meaningful power, whereas with nuclear energy, all you need is a few micrograms of material. So we have intellectual prowess that we can deploy to manage this process, to develop it further and have small, compact, solid-state devices that will be able to generate safe and abundant nuclear energy. And I think that's what we need to work on more than we are now.
And do you think that that's something that is feasible in our climate and our culture today?
I think so, and this NASA paper helps a lot because it's a legitimate research by a legitimate institution, published in peer-reviewed journal, and it just opens up the possibilities to people that were skeptical, or people that were not aware that this is even possible. So we need to think more out of the box. So conventional hot fusion that involves billions of dollars, and there's been a lot of talk on the news now about new reactors built in USA and UK, all pertaining to conventional tokamak architecture. But these are multi-billion-dollar installations that are still in 10 to 20 years away from anything meaningful. So why not try something cheaper like this NASA approach, with material in vials, at the cost of a few $100, and you got your nuclear reactions. Maybe it can be scaled. I'm sure it can be scaled. So my point is, we need to spend more time on pursuing alternative ideas, and ideas we pushed for 40 years or 60 years now don't seem to be working out.
It's always great talking to you, Dr. Max, and I always like talking about art and science with you. So I appreciate you for joining our program today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Very good. Thanks for stopping by. We'll continue in just a moment with more after these short messages on A Neighbor's Choice. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender. Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
Here's one thing you can scratch off your to-do list without going anywhere, without any out-of-pocket cost to you, and even get up to $150 cash back. Get that crack in your windshield fixed by calling Auto Glass America. They'll come to you, and with comprehensive insurance coverage, there's no cost to you. Call Auto Glass America now and fix that pane in the glass with premium glass and a lifetime warranty. Call 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS. Auto Glass America.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We just had Dr. Max stop by, our nuclear scientist and poet friend, musician as well, great Renaissance fellow. And now I want to turn to another neighbor who joins us by email, sent a nice letter, Kristen. And she sent a nice letter, but I want to hone in on some thoughts she shared. As I was listening to your program this morning, as you chatted about this Orwellian nightmare our society seems to be descending into, a few things were swirling around my head, and I just had to write. Even if you don't respond, I felt I had to get these out somewhere. As conversations arise around requiring individuals to produce health papers to attend things such as sporting events, concerts, or other large social events, there are several alarm bells going off in my head. Currently, COVID is not the most virulent, deadly, or widely infectious agent mankind has been exposed to. Measles is a simple example with an RO of around 15 to 18, if I'm not mistaken. Yet we are not required to show proof of vaccination for these types of diseases for the events mentioned. So how consistent is this truly? Don't think me a fool. I know what it's truly about, but just for the sake of thought. Additionally, my main argument for today, at least, as it seems new things pop into my head all the time, centers around HIPAA. As a healthcare worker, I am bound and hold in the utmost regard the patient's privacy. Not only is this a legality, it is the dignity and choice of the patient who to share their information with about their conditions. To implement the idea of a papers, please situation around health status, what's to become of patient privacy? Is this something that will be just thrown away like a dirty napkin? If we're going to abolish individual health privacy for this, then what's to stop the state from re-implementing blood testing for couples wanting to marry to ensure neither has HIV or Tay-Sachs gene or cystic fibrosis or any other agent that can be passed between spouses or on to their children? At what point does bodily autonomy and bodily privacy become trumped by another's need for safety from a virus that has a roughly 95 to 99% recovery rate, depending on your age and comorbidity status? It seems that it is no one else's business what my health or sickness status is other than myself and the professionals I'm choosing to receive treatment from. However, our country has spiraled into a sad pool of people who feel entitled to someone else's space, personal property, and even personal choices. Yet those same people often display little self-responsibility or consistent application or understanding of the issue at hand. Lastly, to those cheering for mandated vaccines, I urge them not to forget some of the horrible results of these programs that have happened just in the last 100 years from similar programs. The Tuskegee experiments are simply the fastest to come to mind. What a devious situation that was. The abdication of one's personal choices and responsibility to those choices at the favor of government taking over those functions tells me we have built a country of mentally lazy individuals who are unwilling to test the rigor of their own ideas against their neighbors or friends who might think differently and be able to offer some healthy mental exercise in conversation or debate. Instead, backs are turned, doors are closed, and calls for government or huge social media to shut down the opinions that make such individuals uncomfortable. We see this not only in our mental fortitude, but our physical, as well as what has sadly been exposed by COVID. It's easy to do nothing and expect someone else to fix it. I can expand and talk about this. But this is just interesting. You know, the thoughts that Kristen shared with us are very good. And we have to be careful about handing over our personal sovereignty. Not that we're islands unto ourselves. We may be individually connected, as I have talked about on this program. But just because our self is shaped by others around us doesn't mean they have the prerogative to implement preemptive force to dominate what's in our body and to dominate what we do with our body. And that's something we should cherish and protect and talk about as much as possible. If not now, when? We'll be back with more in just a moment.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040, WHBO.
President-elect Biden urging the White House to do more to stop the spread of COVID-19.
Teeth
a crisis right now. And this nation needs presidential leadership right now.
The FDA is expected to sign off shortly on the COVID-19 vaccine that was made by American pharmaceutical giant Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech. After that, it's on to the CDC's advisory panel, which is expected to meet tomorrow morning. Approving the vaccine is one thing. Convincing people to get it, that's another.
Knowing what I know personally, having gone over the data, definitely I will get vaccinated. And I will get vaccinated publicly.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, who will serve as chief medical advisor to President-elect Biden. The Senate signed off on a continuing resolution to avert a government shutdown, which was just hours away, and passed the National Defense Authorization Act, doing so by a veto-proof margin. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Hello, David Gronowski here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I want to look at some of the news that's going around today and try to break it down, see what's going on. Here's this story. I wanted to cover this just real quick. Just an example. I mean, there's so much of it that we become kind of numb to it. But I want to, it's like if everybody's speeding, it's hard to see who's speeding first or how much. It's all just one, mass. But look at this story in Media. I just saw this quote, and it's talking about Donald Trump's recent tweet, of course. What else do they talk about? Mediaite says, and it's a reference to a tweet he made, but I'm just going to quote this from the article. It says, the president then quoted an unknown fan from one of his rallies in Georgia who threatened a future, quote, very dangerous moment, unquote, and claimed that things were going to, quote, escalate dramatically. Let me just give you an example. This is how pathetic these liars are, these PR firm hacks. Because I looked at it, and again, the guy talking about Donald Trump has more in common with his policy preferences to Donald Trump than I have to either of them. I know that for sure. But yet, even though I am not in that fight of policy and politics, I can see how obviously they lie, because he quotes he presents the tweet later. And so I read it. Donald Trump says people are upset and they have a right to be. Georgia not only supported Trump in 2016, but now this is the only state. So he's quoting the supporter, a Trump fan. He says, this is the only state in the Deep South that went for Biden. Have they lost their minds? This is going to escalate dramatically. This is a very dangerous moment in our history. The fact that our country is being stolen, a coup is taking place in front of our eyes, and the public can't take this anymore. So I don't see the way they lie and manipulate it. They make it sound like the president threatened a future very dangerous moment. No, he's saying the present moment is dangerous already because of the inability to have honest media and honest government bureaucracies deal with the concerns that people have with the integrity of a voting system that has a track record of, when you have universal mail-in ballots that European Union and other places have had a lot of problems with and a lot of dubious, issues with, and they've rejected a large percentage of these mail-in ballots in the past for being improper, but now we don't see that level of percentage of rejection. And people have legitimate concerns, and yet the media, like Mediaite and all these other places, say nothing to see here. So that's what the guys say. It doesn't say there will be a future escalation threatened. It's so stupid the way they lie. And people who read this kind of garbage mythology, they think that they're in this cocoon of stupidity that allows them to dehumanize people because they don't want to look at the truth. Where do you see the word threatening a future very dangerous moment? The fan that he's quoting says, this is a very dangerous moment in our history. The fact that our country is being stolen. Okay, that's his opinion about the integrity of the Georgia election, where counties are going against the certification. Like Coffee County in Georgia is going against the certification of the results because of real problems they have with these different processes and systems. But see, they try to divide people with this artificial reality, and it works for a certain percentage of low information people who want to hate people blindly. That's not what Trump wasn't quoting someone saying, we're going to threaten this in a future event, very dangerous. It's not what it said at all. I just quoted the tweet. It's not there. But this is just one example of millions that these liars propagate to people, and it's totally reckless, and it should be totally repudiated. Here's another example of how the media creates this false reality. This is a post from Rita Panahi. And it says Politico before and after the election. And it has a Politico headline that says Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intel officials say. So whenever they want to discredit something, like they are the priests that they try to act like they are, they'll say the word officials say, and then they'll say the garbage unfounded statement. Because they know, just like marketing advertising agencies, if you put the word experts or officials or scientists say, it could be a total garbage lie, but a large percentage of the population will just accept whatever garbage you fill up with. So it says the first headline, Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intel officials say. That was before the election on Politico. Now, after the election, Justice Department's interest in Hunter Biden covered more than taxes. Federal prosecutors also have investigated foreign ties, possible money laundering. That's called myth making. That's called lying. That's a PR firm for a particular corporate set of interests. Another interesting story. This is in Sky News, an Australian outlet. Says Facebook's independent fact-checking certifier exposed as Hillary Clinton supporter. An outspoken Twitter activist critical of Donald Trump who brags about being on Team Hillary Clinton is the supposedly independent expert in charge of who can become a Facebook fact-checker. So that's not surprising to anybody who knows how partisan and ridiculous all these platforms are. And partisan doesn't do it justice because they like the Republican neo-libs, neocon, uniparty, but they don't like anybody that challenges anything outside of that allowable framework. So this international fact-checking network certifier, Margot Suska, I guess, is unashamedly politically biased, but she was responsible for issuing 19 fact-check licenses or reviews for organizations to become fact-checkers. That includes Associated Press, Check Your Fact, Decryptors, Lead Stories, MediaWise, and The Dispatch. Ms. Suska has appeared on propaganda network Russia Today to criticize President Trump and has tweeted that it would be a dereliction of duty to broadcast his speeches. So, that's what they are. They're just dubious satires on what they say that they're supposed to be. Here's another example of Orwellian media. NPR talking about the Hunter Biden story. This is published on October 22nd, before the election. They say, why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post's Hunter Biden story? We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. And we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. That's Terrence Samuels, NPR's managing editor for news, on the Hunter Biden story, because they are trying to massage reality. You should reject this if you're independent, if you're progressive, liberal, libertarian, green, whatever. We should all reject this kind of lying state media monopoly. Nobody should have this acceptable. This is not acceptable for anybody who's a serious intellectual or a serious adult or anybody with moral decency. Regardless of your ideology, you don't have to have any ideological commitments to see how rotten this is. So they say, we don't want to waste your time with reporting on stories that are not really stories. That's before the election. Now here's the NPR headline. It says, NPR has reached out to U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware and will update accordingly. Hunter Biden under federal investigation for tax matter. So after they get their candidate, Joe Biden, who represents neoliberal conformity, outdated ideas, who represents fake green energy to the detriment of real clean energy. He represents fake justice reform to the detriment of real justice reform. He represents banker bailouts, regulations, mandates, corporate fascist policies, corporate welfare. Represents centralization of corporate interests and power from government bureaucrats that have self-interest in mind. Represents mass incarceration for 50 years in office. Represents perpetual war with 50 years in office to prove it. And they love that garbage bigotry so much that the NPR lied to their low information audience, because they are low information if that's where they're getting their sources. They're lied to and told there's nothing to see here. And then once they can't hide it anymore and their little guy they think is over the finish line, oh yeah, there's something going on. Sorry. It's pathetic. Drew Holden says, I want to pause here to make something abundantly clear. The reason the Hunter story didn't earn the attention it should have is because the media actively spread a conspiracy theory that it was Russian disinformation in the days leading up to the election. That's it. And that was a racist conspiracy theory. It was a xenophobic, baseless, ridiculous conspiracy theory. And that's what these neoliberal media outlets do. And they're the same ones telling you, when you hear these ABC news breaks and so forth, all these other groups, they're the ones saying, oh, it's okay. Cuomo's going to, lock you in your house and he's going to mandate the medicine and that's fine because cases are rising. They don't tell you to take care of your immune system. They don't tell you to put down the pizza rolls. They don't tell you to put down the corn dogs that have massive omega-6 linoleic acid, toxic vegetable oils, processed flour, processed sugar. They don't care about you. They're just pushing you around like bullies if you listen to them and let them affect you. And then you see other headlines that illustrate the pathetic nature of the establishment, state media. Here's a headline in, I don't know what outlet this is. Looks like, it's a headline. It's an opinion article by an opinion columnist named Arwa Madawi. It says, why Ivanka Trump's new haircut should make us very afraid. And then the news story, and then the uproar over Ocasio-Cortez's hair is a reminder that women can't win under the patriarchy. So see, she's playing the mean girl, gossip girl, making fun of someone's hair or something when it's Ivanka Trump. But then when someone looks at AOC's hair, it's that patriarchy is dominating people. This is nothing but the drivel you get when you have a failing global empire that pretends to be some kind of for the people thing, when in reality it's a uniparty that is bought and owned by corporate special interests and perpetual bureaucracies that can't get fired for their terrible job production. And of course, one of the great bastions of fake news for the interests of giant corporations and bigots is Time magazine. I remember being in middle school and high school, and you'd read a Time magazine, and I would just look at all the lies back then. Even I'd be like, how can people print this stuff, and how can people read this stuff and think this is a fair press? And that was a while back, and it's even worse now. Of course, they've named the person of the year is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, we never even saw these guys. These guys hung out in the basement all the time. Kamala Harris just laughs every time you talk to her and calls Joe Biden a segregationist, trained by segregationists. What did they do of anything valuable? They did nothing, but they are just political, petty people, this Time magazine blog. But listen to the way they say it. The editor-in-chief of Time, Edward Felsenthal, says, for changing the American story, for showing that the forces of empathy are greater than the furies of division, for sharing a vision of healing in a grieving world. What a fanboy. How embarrassing. you imagine grown adults read that and they're like, oh, yes, this is such good journalism. What about 50 years of bombing people to smithereens that Joe Biden has gone along with is about the force of empathy? What about dividing people by ethnic division and racial division and gender division instead of uniting people against the corrupt justice system that they both stand for? What about that looks like they're standing against the furies of division? What about the record of Kamala Harris laughing and locking people up for nonviolent crimes, making a career off of it, parading people like Cherie Peoples in front of the press as they cart her off for having her daughter miss too many days of school? What does that have to do with healing a grieving world? Only an ignorant bigot like Time Magazine's editor-in-chief would say such stupidity and actually think we're not laughing. We'll be back in just a moment with more. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less, delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hot snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day, and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. Fastfreshseafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
Do you despise lawyers? That may be the case until you need one. If you've been in an auto accident and need legal advice, go to the local attorneys that have served Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Catania and Catania. They are family owned. They understand your needs with legal advice. When you need legal representation, Catania will care for your case from the beginning to final settlement. You won't need to worry. Catania will represent you throughout the entire process. Auto and motorcycle accidents are too frequent in Florida. If you've been a victim, contact Catania. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Referrals on request. Contact Catania. Putting families first.
Offices Tampa, non-attorney spokesperson.
Hello, David Gronowski here, your host. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice as we look at the week and reflect on where we're going with a big picture view in mind. Always remember you can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com. So I'm looking at these stories that, represent the stories of the day, And, I saw Tim Pool posted that 40 states are currently disputing who the president is, and the FBI just subpoenaed the attorney general who filed the initial lawsuit. FBI subpoenas, this is a story on kvue.com. FBI subpoenas Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton amid whistleblower allegations. It just, it certainly looks like the FBI has become a political entity, or has been for some time, most likely, right? Decades probably. But it's rearing its reality in the face of the mainstream to see it for the first time. Because it certainly is suspicious. They always seem to just investigate one particular worldview, which is anybody critical of endless wars, anybody critical of mass surveillance, anybody critical of globalism and giant corporate welfare. You're the one that gets treated like worse than a second-class citizen. And anybody who plays along with the Mickey Mouse charade of pretending like everything's just perfect with the corporate oligarch system we have, you get treated awful if you do anything to threaten their little game. And it's sad to see that is what we have to live with, because it's such a waste of everybody's time. Ben Domenech says the Hunter and Jim Biden story wasn't hacked material, in reference to Hunter and Jim Biden being the corruption that's been exposed. It wasn't hacked material. It wasn't Russian misinformation. It's something that people deserve to know before voting. Big tech and corporate media tried to make sure that didn't happen, and now they're going to gaslight you about all of it, to try to act like they didn't cover it up, and then try to discredit whatever they can as it comes out that all that stuff was real. It is shameful. It's a disgrace. And even if one single ballot let's just say there was no ballot shenanigans, there was no weird counts, there was no problems with the system, that Smartmatic and Venezuela and all this, none of that stuff. It's all just snap our fingers and imagine none of that happened. The fact that the media coordinated an attempt with giant corporations and bureaucracies to hide evidence for the American people to consider when conducting an election, to see who will be in power of the nuclear codes and who will be sitting in a throne where they can be looted for foreign interests benefit. That is a disgrace and an assault against everything that our republic is about. And all they do is say, oh, you're attacking our democracy. That's all. They just tell you what they already do, but they try to blame it on you. Very abusive, disgusting people. They lie shamelessly and cover up stuff like a bunch of amoral nihilists. But we cannot stoop to that level. We cannot become corporate, shills and amoral nihilists to try to beat them at their own game, because then we'll all lose. Somebody has to be dignified and be a human being and be an adult. But it doesn't mean we can't hold back in telling the truth about what the lies that this media has perpetuated, covering up stories like that. And then saying that was a fair election. That was not a fair election. That was an Orwellian Soviet-style election, just from the media gaslighting alone. Covering up completely, censoring information about the disgusting behavior of the Biden family, and abusing anybody who dared to think about it, including progressives like Glenn Greenwald. And meanwhile, there are human beings that have been totally hurt because of our reckless, out of control, neoliberal establishment. And it reflects in the story titled Trump's Allies Are Speaking Out in Support of Ross Ulbricht's Clemency. We've had Ross Ulbricht we've had his mother on our program. Ross Ulbricht, the article says, this is on bitcoinrocks.substack.com. Ross Ulbricht was only 26 years old when he created a free market website called Silk Road. It was a youthful mistake that he regrets to this day, but he does not deserve the double life sentence that he received, especially under questionable conditions. The media attention-seeking prosecutor is no longer on the job. The judge criticized for her excessive sentencing is no longer on the bench, and 2 corrupt government agents who collected the evidence went to federal prison for their crimes. Ross has been in prison for 8 years now, and his best chance of being released is a commutation issued by President Donald Trump. The president's top allies are speaking out in support of his doing so. Newsmax TV, known as Trump's new favorite network, recently featured Ross's case. When you look at the crazy sentence, there's a lot of questions about whether that was a miscarriage of justice, they quote Newsmax saying. Bernard Kerik, former police commissioner of New York City and a top Trump ally, has decried Ross's double life sentence as one of the great travesties of justice in American history. Charlie Kirk, the founder and president of Turning Point USA, is, quote, outraged about this total miscarriage of justice, unquote, and said, quote, the president should commute Ross Obrecht's insane over-sentencing, unquote. David Safavian, who we've had on the program on A Neighbor's Choice, whom Trump pardoned earlier this year, said that Ross's case highlights the insanity of the current system, unquote. Sean Hopwood, another guest of A Neighbor's Choice that we enjoy, Sean Hopwood, who has partnered with the president on criminal justice reform and for whom Tiffany Trump worked as a research assistant, called Ross's sentence, quote, grossly excessive, unquote. Other supporters include leaders at prominent conservative and libertarian organizations such as Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity, the Cato Institute, Young Americans for Liberty, Free the People, and others. Arthur Reiser, a former federal prosecutor, called Ross's double life sentence especially troubling. Nancy Gertner, a former senior U.S. district judge, joined an amicus brief in support of Ross's Supreme Court appeal. So it goes on. And I just want to illustrate this story to say that, you know, there are real victims that are being destroyed by the lies of the corporate press and their partners in government bureaucracy. So it's not a game. It's not fun. This is not football. There are real people languishing away from their family, away from proper nutrition and proper sunshine for nonviolent first-time offenses, where there is no victim on the police report, but they've been given political prosecution by out-of-control bureaucrats who are self-interested and know not what they do, just like those who persecuted Jesus. Jesus came to reveal things hidden since the foundation of the world, and one of the things that's been hidden since the foundation of the world is the disgusting way that human beings treat people when they feel like they can get away with something as long as everybody else is doing it. And all the bureaucrats that work together to put away a man for life, double life sentence for running a website, as stupid or reckless as you might want to call that behavior, it is not worth a double life sentence. And that's what this is all about. It's about the human beings and the families that are ground down by our system that has lost its way and lost its respect for personhood. And never forget that that's what we're here fighting for. Lives and families who've been affected by this fake news apparatus and the sacrificial behavior that persists in these runaway bureaucracies. Flesh and blood human beings just like you, just like your son, just like your daughter, just like your brother, just like your sister, just like your mother, your father, your grandmother. There are people just like them, sitting in a dungeon, sitting in a prison cage where violence is rife. And they shouldn't be there, but they're there because of a mass bystander effect that seeks to ignore the impotent violence that persists in our bureaucracies. Let's make sure that this ends on our watch, that no victim, no crime is something that becomes cemented for the future of society. No victim, no crime. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Have a great weekend. Godspeed.